The majority of the factoring information that we would need for this course is really found already in a previous set of videos, so you can consult those for the other topics that we would have, and that would be including the greatest common factor, factoring out a binomial as a greatest common factor, factoring by grouping, factoring using what we call the AC method, or if you have a different way of factoring trinomials, that's also fine. We have one particular case of factoring binomials, and that's the difference of squares factoring formula. And basically, we want to add to that only these other two possibilities, the sum of cubes and the difference of cubes. And what you can see here from their formulas is that they are very, very similar to one another. So what you have within each one is a way of factoring one more type of binomial than what we've seen in the past. We can do the sum of cubes, where the first half of our answer is very nice, a plus b. The second half of our answer has the negative in the middle there and goes a squared minus ab plus b squared. The difference of cubes, very similar. A couple of little sign changes in the middle of each of those factors. And to utilize that difference of cubes to highlight how the formula can be used, rather than the a's and the b's, I can remove that and I can try to figure out what would need to go in each of those empty spots, the spots where the a's were and the spots where the b's were. So taking that difference of cubes formula and removing the a and the b, removing the a and the a and the b and the b, and now having blanks to fill in this particular case, what I need to know is what would I cube in order to get a 8, as well as what do I cube in order to get a y cubed. Well, now that I've determined that, that's the a part of my formula, so that means that the first half of my first factor and the first half, the first two empty spots in my second factor, I'm going to want to fill in with that blue 2y. Now I'm going to want to go back to my original problem and ask a very similar sort of question about the back half. What do I cube to get 125? What do I cube to get z cubed? And that gives me the second half of what I need for each of my factors. So the first factor will have that green 5z. The second factor will have the last two blanks, each filled in with that green 5z. And then I would want to simplify the appearance of my second factor. My first one is already nice and pretty. Parentheses 2y minus 5z. But my second factor there, I can do a little tinkering to make that look a little bit more direct. 2 squared is 4, y squared. So that second factor kicks off with a 4y squared. In the middle, I've got the blue 2y times the green 5z. 2 times 5 is 10, yz, showing up there in that middle of my second factor. Another plus sign, and from the very end where I have my parentheses 5z squared, 5 squared is 25, z squared. So at the very end of that, 25z squared. And like always with my factoring answers, if I go ahead and multiply that out, yes, I have to take the time and trouble to do that, but if I take the time and trouble to do that, I can verify that I do in fact have the correctly factored answer by getting back 8y cubed minus 125z cubed. So if I go through the time and trouble of making that multiplication all worked out and simplified, I can verify I do in fact have the correct answer, which we do. So that is the only extra factoring topic that we have beyond the ones that you would have already seen somewhere in the past. And that will allow us to move along and take care of solving equations by factoring.